Alright, it's almost 10 a.m. July 1st. I'm on my ride home from hot yoga, second video of the day. Don't stare at my titties. Try not to look at my titties, ladies. I wish people found me as funny as I found myself. So, got a 30-minute drive, leaving hot yoga. Beautiful Saturday morning. It's crazy. The whole hot yoga studio, entire city filled with lots and lots and lots of people. The next closest hot yoga studio is 30 minutes away. Yet there's only like 10 people in there. Stretching, getting healthy, sweating. My old room, pre-pandemic, was shoulder to shoulder. Everybody was packed. But I got out, I was listening to a little bit of 432 hertz meditation music in my car for a second, and it just sparked a thought in my brain. People's health, the average person, the reactionary follower, and I don't say that in a derogatory way, within a species you need visionary leaders who take risks, which are dangerous. If everybody did that, we wouldn't exist. And you need followers, masses that just fall in line, don't like to take chances, monkey see, monkey do. They're kind of like the baseline that makes sure that when the visionaries muck up, the DNA is still there. And because you have that variable of the good and the mediocre, you're gonna get the downsides too, the underachievers. And I wouldn't even say underachieving, because achievement is like an action. There's just certain people that don't have skills, abilities, IQs, gene sets, that got a bad roll of the dice. They just can't navigate. In a free society, there would be enough masses and visionaries to support them, as long as those poor gene sets weren't subsidized via force into the point where they were incentivized. And what do I mean by that? It's not a conspiracy theory that as government got their clutches deeper and deeper into healthcare, that people became more and more unhealthy. It can be withstood a little bit, but still not great. So if you look at some of the older programs, the VA, Veterans Association Hospital, and you look at Medicare, Medicaid, all before the Obamacare Act, which was the Hillary Care Act, was jammed through in the middle of the night by some Somalis in Michigan, I believe, after tested by fake Republican Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. This is not a system that's based on merit that incentivizes health. It incentivizes cure, which is very expensive. And the idea is, do whatever you want, take zero responsibility, and whatever the outcomes are, you're free from the consequence, because we can print money which will take it from a little piece from everybody via inflation. The rich will get it first, the bankers will get it first, they'll spend it, and by the time you get it, the currency is worth less. we'll steal a little bit of that funding, and we'll pay for the bad choices of people. Which, if you make a lot of bad choices, is great evolutionary strategy for you. However, if you make good choices, you're being robbed of some of the time and energy on top of the time you take for health to pay for somebody else's lack of their health. And when people speak about this as a satanic method, what they mean is, in a freer society where there isn't a compulsory tax on an enforced currency, currently USD fiat, there's natural consequences to being unhealthy, and society can only support a finite amount of those consequences. And when it's done voluntary, there's a social pressure to push those individuals towards health. It could be done in like, if people claim that capitalists are extremely greedy, imagine a healthcare system where capitalists needed a lot of money. They wanted the most money they could get because they're extremely greedy, and they couldn't get checks printed and sent to them from the government. The individual who's unhealthy or communalistic, that lives in a world where the commune pays for them and their choices, immediately thinks, well, then I would die because it's greedy, because they wouldn't give it to me. That natural order, that natural consequences is God. And intervening in that and trying to engineer these natural laws is satanic. But if these corporations truly were greedy, wouldn't they want to just keep you as healthy as possible so that you can make as much money as possible, so you can keep feeding them money and they can keep raising the rates and make you super efficient for them? So now you're like, well, then you're a slave to these corporations. And so, well, what's the alternative? The alternative is, one, you don't have to join. You can still be respect the natural order, where if you're not healthy and you don't eat right and you don't exercise, you make bad decisions and choices, the natural consequences will hit you and occur. Once this is subsidized and it can be printed, and the money can be printed, stolen from the individuals via inflation and given to the rich via the banks, the healthcare system is, of course, gonna push body positivity, fat phobia. These are advertising terms. These are people call them propaganda, and the problem with propaganda is the government's not really smart enough to advertise, because there's no merit of feedback. But if they create an entity called a corporation, and I've mentioned this in other videos, a corporation is just a piece of paper with magic words written on it that says, our mafia will give you the right to privatize any funds that you create and subsidize any losses that you have in the exchange for collecting taxes for us on the day-to-day citizen. Or you can collect taxes on top of that. You collect health care. A lot of people pay it out of their checks, and it gets in, and the corporation gets it. And so there's no incentive. In fact, the incentive, because they're trying to cure instead of prevent, is to get you nice and fat, is to get you on a prescription drug, is to come up with new diseases and new mental disorders, ways that you navigate the world individually. If it's a disorder and can be medicated to disappear, then you're a lifelong product. And if you can no longer afford it, I know people that I tried to work with that were put on medication for depression after their father died, their brother committed suicide. They put them on depression medication, which made them suicidal. So they put them on suicidal medication, which didn't work. So they put them on more suicidal medication, which made them schizophrenic. And they said, well, this is late stage life schizophrenia. So their total government bill a month for the drugs that they were now redesigned, their brain was restructured to have all these drugs, was $650 a month that they couldn't afford. So they went on mass health care, and then basically the person was turned into a product. They were put into a halfway home where they could still live in the street and stuff. They would go get their medication and follow their orders. The government would print $650 and give him a check, but he never touched it. It went straight to the nursing thing, which would give him medication. He would take that medication, and he was the product with extra steps. The medication wasn't doing anything. It was actually starting to cause long-term issues on his organs and his mental health. But so he's the product because he needs that $650 now. And when I say this to you, you're like, well, you're crazy. Talk to a therapist. This is a study. This is science. When pills and health things are created, there should be a change. Like if the polio vaccine works, then polio should disappear. If the malaria pill works, you take it and there's no more malaria. If there's this thing called depression and they got these pills and these cures, and once it happened, it skyrocketed and went way up and more people had depression, then it's not a cure. And I'm old enough to remember when they pushed this stuff through too. So when they pushed this stuff through, they said, oh, these are not prescriptions for life. What these are, they're crutches to help you while we work. So if you're severely depressed, we need you to give you enough. And basically what they're saying is, the corporation is saying, I have a worker that can't get to work because they're depressed. So it's create a drug that can get them to go to work long enough that we can cure this. And then it's like, well, it's expensive for us to try to give them therapy and fix this stuff and still pressure and get the work that we need done. So now they're lifetime prescriptions. And now they're like, just keep drugging these up. It's no different than an animal on a farm. If you go and you look into some of these cows and these pigs and these chickens that they raise in these awful conditions, they continuously inject them. They become antibiotic. When antibiotics don't work, anti-antibiotics. They basically become immune to antibiotics because there's so many bacteria and stuff that's just ravaging these animals, and they're injecting them and changing them in chemicals and hormones and trying to manipulate them because they're not supposed to be in that environment. You're not supposed to be in this environment. We as people aren't supposed to be chatteled into this environment. So take a look at yourself in the mirror if you call yourself, and I was saying this the other day, they're called, to me, they're just LARPitarians. They call themselves a libertarian, but they're LARPitarians. And by that I mean they claim to hate the healthcare system. They don't want the government involved in healthcare, and yet they're on the healthcare system, and they're like, well, I have no choice. I'm within this system. I have to buy it. I have to be part of it, even though it's expensive, because I need this blood pressure medication. I need this and there. And they're overweight. They're fat. They eat like shit. They're buying food that's injected with government subsidized corn syrups and seed oils and soybean oil and all this bullshit. They're just another piece of the puzzle. They haven't taken self-accountability. They haven't become independent and far away from the system as possible. They continue to try to join the mafia, create a libertarian party, a LARPitarian party, pretend like they're for liberty and freedom when they're just soft Republicans or soft Democrats, because they've gotten too extreme. We need just the right amount of government health care now that I'm fat and out of shape and don't take care of myself. And the idea that people are poor and can't afford this stuff is crazy. They're covered in tattoos, walking around with smartphones and tablets. I mean, I just laugh about the choices because I see all these people with these brand new cars and whatever. If it's your first car and people can afford what they can afford, but it's like if you buy a brand new car that's like a Kia, you're gonna get like $100K out of it, and the thing's gonna be trashed. And maybe you just need a vehicle, but people are, they don't understand how ingrained and how non-independent they actually are. They're not even working to get away from the system. And the health aspect of it is something you can take full control of. You can stop right today. And don't tell me it's too expensive, because you can go to the store, you can go to Costco or one of these superstores and get a huge bag of white rice. You can get a huge bag of beans, dried beans, no sodium, no chemicals, no rehydrate them in an Instapot. It takes 20 minutes with some filtered water. You should be filtering your water, taking all the chemicals out of it, taking all the pharmaceuticals out of it at your house. So you have filtered, clean H2O water. Even if you have a well, you have to be careful because this stuff gets into the ground. You should be doing minimum of carbon, but probably an IDE or whatever they call it, filter as well, that gets rid of the fluorides, the chlorides, and all that other stuff the best you can. And get the pharmaceuticals out of there. You should be testing the water to the best of your ability. There's stations where you can bring it. There's some places have spring water areas that already pre-test the water for you, so you can know that it's safe to drink. So you can go get that spring water for free and then refilter it on top of what's out there. Take charge of what you can take charge of. This idea that people are sitting around voting for the lesser of two evils, when every day you have choices that you can make for yourself as an individual that are good. They're not lesser, they're good. And it just starts with a step. Now everybody's got another pharmaceutical thing. So health is fat phobia. You're fat phobic. Body positivity. It's not a pharmaceutical thing. It's not an advertisement. It's a way of life. It's ingrained in us. We're telling each other that this 1950s, 1940s white supremacy movement of being in shape is not the thing. But along comes Ozempic, and everybody's now injecting themselves with a pharmaceutical that makes themselves skinny. It's being pushed, and no one's saying this is the fat phobic drug. Maybe they are. I don't know. I don't really pay attention. But now that there's a pharmaceutical way to lose weight, it's cool to lose weight again. So now we can not only get fat people on the dole, turn them into products, and turn you mentally disabled and get you hooked on drugs. We could get you turned into a transgender. You could be on hormones forever. There's all sorts of ways we can get you. Now you want to be skinny, we can hit you hook on a drug that makes you shit yourself while you sleep. And if you've ever seen David Goggins talk about his weight loss transformation when he was fat and got skinny, and somebody says to him, why didn't you have all this extra skin? And he didn't have the extra skin because when you lose weight in a healthy way, when you burn fat and build density of muscle, not everybody, some people will get it depends at the rate, but what happens is you start losing fat, you start losing fat percentage, soft, like three quarters of it should be soft, and then a quarter of it, depending on diet, will be like dense muscle mass. If you do it properly, you can change those numbers where you're doing like a clean bulk, they call it, I think, in the bodybuilding industry. Basically, you're eating at maintenance, and you're doing a long period of time, and you're putting on muscle mass, and the dense muscles stick around, and then you just slowly lose fat. With Ozempic, it flips around. So you're losing weight, but not only are you losing fat, you're losing dense muscle mass, and then when you lose muscle mass, you lose caloric burn capability. So when people get off this and they stop shitting their beds while they're injecting themselves with Ozempic, they have less muscle mass, they have less fat, they weigh less quicker because they're not just losing fat, they're losing muscle mass, and muscle weighs more than fat. But when they get back off of the Ozempic, now they're burning less calories, they have less muscle mass, they have to regain the muscle mass if they decide to exercise. If they don't, and they resort back to having a natural appetite, they're going to gain back fat. They're going to gain back pure fat with less muscle mass. So now it's going to be even harder the second time. So you got to just keep juicing yourself up. And now you're not in a healthier body shape. So even when people are tying their stomachs and doing caloric restriction and all this stuff, it's the same thing. You're losing. You have to exercise to build muscle mass of some sort as you lose the excess fat. And it takes longer if you're standing on a scale. If you do measurements, it's going to be different for everybody, and depending on how hard you push yourself and your restrictions, dietary, genetics, capability, age, metabolic speed, all these factors will come into play. But it's about health and not vanity. And I didn't get into an argument. I just a couple tweets back and forth with a Christian crypto individual that I follow and really enjoy his work. And basically I said, if I'm made in God's image, I want to look godly, because he was saying, it's not necessarily manly to work out and smoke cigars. And I said, working out brought me closer to God. And I didn't get into back and forth, but I think what people, it's your focus is where the sin comes in. So if you're working out and you're exercising and you're dieting and eating to look better, to get somebody to notice your looks so that then they date you or whatever, then you're sinning because you're off aim. The idea of diet and exercise and building strength is so that you can be in a state where you're not taking advantage of satanic elements such as pharmaceutical companies, corporate healthcare companies, corporate insurance companies. You're closer to baseline. You're clearing your mind, which is your body, which is your soul. You cannot separate them. If you have a healthy body, it helps your mind be healthy. If you have a healthy body, healthy mind, it helps your spirit, your essence be healthy. And overall, you feel better, you look better. You're going to have a better experience with life. You're going to be closer and better off to the natural aspects of life. When, for instance, people read statistics incorrectly. Somebody had posted that home births are safer and healthier for individuals and children than hospital births. And immediately the healthcare propagandists and hospitals came out and they cherry-picked a stat, which is somewhat correct. You do have to take into account that when a home birth goes poorly, the individuals from that home birth go to a hospital for help, and then that complication gets rung up under the hospital having an issue, not the home birth. So if the home birth goes correctly, then no one goes to the hospital, then it gets a good check mark. And they just stopped it there. But similar to like eating healthy, veganism, quit smoking, it's just one piece of the puzzle. Because I do not believe that home births are healthier for the children and better on the aggregate, because most people that give birth are unhealthy. So if you're an unhealthy, fat, slovenly, low IQ individual that does drugs and didn't properly track your macros and your micronutrients while you were pregnant, and your family doesn't track them as a whole, then you probably shouldn't go try to have a birth at home, because you don't have enough understanding of your independence to do that. However, if you're an independent person that understands your health, your spouse's health, your family's health, you've done the research, you're educated, you have an high IQ, then those individuals are going to have a better experience at home, because they're not going to be subject to complications that could be caused by factors outside of what they can control within a hospital with masses, such as bacteria, germs, incompetence and stuff that happens in a hospital based on so many people. So you have all the masses coming in there, germs, bacteria and stuff. Or they want to give a C-section because of time and friends of that, and then the child does not get vaginal bacteria and antibodies as they come out the birth canal. So if you are not a larpitarian, you're a libertarian, start to structure your life in a libertarian manner. Live your values, morals, and ethics. And what I mean by that is start where you can, similar to Maslow's tower at the bottom, where take charge of your health independence. And this is going to mean different things for different people. For me, I'm at the point where I'm taking my own blood work. I'm taking my own blood pressure every morning. I'm tracking my macronutrients. I'm doing stress tests. I'm going to the hospital and getting my own reports and blood work done. For you, it might just be you got to start exercising and learning about foods. It's a process. You start reading labels. You start taking corn syrup and government subsidies on it. You start eating whole foods. You start going to a farm. You start growing your own vegetables. Whatever level it is, start the journey of independence from the systems that you can get independence from. And it doesn't mean that you have to do this alone. Libertarianism is not about moving out. I mean, you can, but it's not about moving out in the middle of nowhere on your own, homesteading and living by yourself. You can still join workout communities. You can still join health collectives. You can still join groups and individuals. I don't personally like do that, but I wear a Whoop here on my wrist, and I can go right into that Whoop app, and there's hundreds of collectives that I can join voluntarily. I can join a New Hampshire's men's 40 to 50 exercise group. I can join a health group. I can join there's probably dudes with beards groups. So you can still join collectives, share knowledge, and help each other voluntarily. It's not about independence is not about running solo. It's about knowing thyself, working on being thyself, and getting away from collective programs that don't benefit you. And as they push and push and push and try to encroach, I don't fly. It's a pain in the ass. I'm going to Vegas again this year, and I'm going to drive all the fucking way there. Why? Because I refuse to be treated like a criminal at the fucking airport and groped. And I know a lot of these libertarians like to post getting their cock touched and everything as they fucking drive, as they fly. But it's like, stop fucking giving these people your money to grope you then. Fuck the TSA and fuck airlines. So I'm either going to get to the point where I can own my own private jet, fly, or I'm going to drive. And stop it. Stop going there. And it sucks. And you're like, well, I can't afford. Well, figure out a way to get your life into a situation where you can afford it. All right? I take months off at a time, and I'm like, okay, I want to take a month off. I'll drive to the West Coast in the meantime or whatever. And I go there, and I enjoy the sights along the way. I go and see this stuff. But I'm not going to get on a plane over there and get treated like a criminal. Now, if I'm going to go out of the country, it's a different story. Obviously, I have to sack up and just understand that I'm getting into the system there. And you have to pick your battles. But pick some battles. All right? And on top of that, last thing I'm going to say about the health thing is there's no such thing, and I got to say this last time, there's no such thing as public, the public. It's all owned land. What you're calling public land is government mafia owned land. So it sucks, but when you're on government mafia owned land, you have to deal with the pollutants that the government mafia allows on their land. I prefer to try to stay as private as possible, but you're still going to get some carryover and pollution from other people in your area. But it's not anti-libertarian to tell somebody who's smoking in your face that's killing themselves to get the hell out of your face with cigarettes. They're violating the NAP by making you breathe in smoke. You're not violating the NAP by telling them to get the fuck away from you. All right? And I'm sick of this. To me, it's communistic. It's a communal libertarian. It's LARPing. My body is my private property. Like, well, I can do whatever I want. No, you're smoking, and the smoke is damaging other people. Okay? So, how do you want me to self-defend myself? I'm doing it with words right now, but we can escalate this if you want. Come step on my private property and pull this bullshit. So, anywho, I had a nice calm yoga thing. I'm home. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day. I think I'm going to go buy a new gun. I want to go to the range today, so it's just who I am. Some people think I'm a leftist, some people think I'm a conservative. I'm a philosopher. I happen to be vegan. I happen to be anti-government. I went to a hot yoga class this morning, and I'm going to the gun range this afternoon. Just how we do it. Have a good Saturday.